Okay, so bearing in mind in the gap there when we were off camera, I was saying a little something about wavelets. Would you just tell us about the discrete cosine transforms and wavelet transforms and why, and tell us some stuff around that. Situate it a bit, yeah.
Wavelets is an alternative way of compressing visual and audio images that is based on waves or plate, image-relevant plates of compression that scale and resize as opposed to just taking a very fundamentally mathematical nearest, saying, oh, this one and this one look similar, let's just call them the same thing. That's your basic nearest neighbor. MPEG, a lot of tricks are involved because compression is just a shell game anyways. And you can make a good image and then just change in subsequent frames, change the things that change in that image and then give you another good image. That's the GOP structure. And that killed us for years. It was try to edit and hit, try to do an edit point on one of those in-between make-believe frames. Terrible. Whereas, you look at Apple ProRes or Cineform or Red Code, any of the new stuff is using this wavelets, and it's just a fantastic image environment to work in. It's rich. It's got potential for good color. There's not a lot of cheating going on. And that's the biggest thing, is just not a lot of cheating going on.
Yeah, I think the current crop of wavelet-based codecs have been held up to a higher criteria, and that is, how does it look, not how much does it cost.
Yeah.
That was an interesting sound.
It's a very interesting sound. It's a kind of...
They've gone from manual hammering to jackhammer. But...
You've got termites.
But the most important thing about wavelets...
Let's just
okay, all right, we've just got to go anyway.
There's some construction going on next door, big deal. The most important thing about wavelets is that it got us over the hump. It got us into the digital age of acquisition. Before that, even though it had digital nameplates and tags on it, it wasn't digital at all. There's a lot of moving parts. As long as it's a moving part, it's not digital. Spinning discs and all that, Digital is CMOS. Analog is CCDs and that whole world. And so the compression, the elegant compressions of wavelets, combined with more economic, both in energy consumption and image data rates, of CCD or of CMOS, got us over the hump and into this kind of new area of production, which is manifest by the red camera.
You used the word in there, and maybe you want to pick this up. You used the word elegant.
It is elegant, as is CMOS technology. When you look at it, just the way it writes out the rap.
Let's talk about elegance. Let's talk about elegance within the mix, because I get it. I get that for me also as an artist, not all the rest of it, cinematography. Elegance is one of the biggest things. It's something about doing skillful means to do things, using skillful means, and in some ways the DCTs were like kind of sledgehammers to batter something. You were going to come in there? What were you going to come in with?
Well, just that the true test of the effectiveness of a codec to an artist was always, how does it look? And I've never really liked anything that I saw that was DCT compressed.
Especially if you're doing visual effects.
Yeah, it's utterly useless as a visual effect. Whereas wavelet-based codecs, wavelet-based compressions, give us good, beautiful, effective results. I used to be a staunch opponent to compression until I saw wavelet-based compressions.
I mean, I have been
and I've been slow coming around to them. I have to confess.
I have been told off by Amara a few times now, but to even think that wavelets have got anything to do with.
She's in my book.
She should be. She's
it. I got a picture of her and everything in the book.
She
I
should be in
swear.
everybody's book as far as I'm concerned.
She's
but
brilliant.
the issue of like image compression is like so small an issue in her world of waveletting.
Yeah.
That it's just kind of a happy coincidence that it benefits us as far as I can work out from what they're doing with wavelets and working through that. But it's a piece. Can I get your understanding what you think's happening there? I mean, my take is you've got a long algorithm, but it cleverly interrogates the data and says, I should respond with this bit rather than this bit.
Oh yeah.
Is that correct
that's
understanding?
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
This scalable.
This intersection.
Not a fixed preset. Go ahead.
Good.
This
Well,
it basically says that this intersection of wavelets shows up looking like more like the original phenomenon that we were sampling.
yeah.
And
there's
that's
an
true.
interesting subjective-objective thing in there, because like looks like to whom? Who's looking? What's doing the looking?
Well, ultimately, hopefully, more people will be looking because it's more pleasant to look at.
I think we should just give it like 5 minutes now, because there used to be a system in London called Chop 'em Out. Not a very elegant phrase, but Chop 'em Out was about having 2 mics up, one on the presenter, one on the stuff, and phase cancellation and
Yeah.
yeah.
I created a system of encoders, pendulum encoders, by which I could, well,
Tell us, because it'll pass whilst.
pendulum encoders that I could use to encode the arm of a Titan crane or a Fisher dolly, so that I could read the angle of the arm. But we quickly learned that as you push and pull and start and stop the dolly or the crane, it adds its own sympathetic vibration to the pendulum that is recorded alongside the data, or embedded in the data that you really want to read, which is the azimuth of the arm. So what I did was I put another exactly the same encoder on the chassis of the dolly, and I subtracted the non-tilting data from the tilting data of the arm encoder, and discovered that I could track both the vibration of the dolly and the exact position of the arm very accurately. And it's just a differential equation.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that. In what we're talking about, there's one hell of a lot of that kind of thinking about how you take what you've got and you kind of look at it. You try to look at it in a certain kind of way and apply some stuff to it to come out with the right mix. But so arguably in this mix, that it's all passing. I get a sense there's a kind of passing show element to all of this. Do you know what I mean by that? You know,
No.
the phenomena of the sideshow, the snake oil sales of the high definition. Because it struck me that in naming, even in the naming, high, it's like arcane.
Relative to
cold.
what? Relative to what?
Sorry, what did I say that was
High. Relative to what?
Exactly. So the propositions in the sales mix were the placement, so that when you desire had to come from the filmmaking community, had to come into the mix. We would desire that which was high and arcane and occult and hidden, and it's a bit like Indiana Jones, isn't it? You've got to go hunt the thing to get it back. But there's a level at which you guys are working at such a level effectively that you're not buying into this whole mix.
Oh yeah, it was very entertaining to see what would happen after everyone started using the expression high definition for 1920 by 1080, because then the very next thing that NHK did in Japan was go out and strike
Ultra
it.
high.
Where do you go
Super
from
high
high definition?
Yeah.
And then you necessarily, because of the way the moniker that they've given it, you have to resort to hyperbole to get to the next step as a logical progression.
You know, Marshall McLuhan calls it hot and cold media.
Yeah.
Much more accurate and apropos, actually, because he ascribes each to a different phase of cognizance. Whereas cold media has a different effect on you and is a different metaphor for telling a story than hot media, hot or higher res.
In this mix, especially around that stuff, especially around McLuhan, you know, bearing in mind that the problem, as far as I understand it, maybe 10 years ago with film stocks, was that the clarity of the lenses with delivering. The problem was generating atmosphere, the look. This awful problem of the look, and what the camera person does and what post does, and quite a lot of abrogation of the camera people now of their duties in a kind of way that I see, to pass it back and then getting this thin patina of look that doesn't quite convince. What do you feel about?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Well, first of all, camera lenses are notoriously softer than HD lenses.
Okay.
Film lenses are softer than HD lenses, almost across the board, unless you get some incredibly bad HD lenses. But put a Canon HJ11 up against a Cooke Prime. Cooke Prime is obviously superior lens, but you look at the same focus chart and the Cooke is going to be softer. There's character there.
Yeah. Character.
And a palette. See, there's these quantifiable but still kind of hard to describe qualities inherent in a good lens.
Can we go there?
Oh, then there's the guy to talk about
Not
it,
just
too.
in lenses though, but let's deal with the lenses. But the issue of character, the issue of atmosphere, the issue of.
But you see,
all of the
digital
issues
lenses are relying on a post-process to imbue that character. That's a whole different methodology and a different production workflow.
Okay.
To me, the question that this raises more than the mechanical question of lenses is the question of intent. And
oh, good angle, yeah.
To my way of thinking, if a project doesn't come out the way I intended it to look, it's because I wasn't able to communicate how I intended it to look to the last position on the chain responsible for creating that look. And to my way of thinking, the tools for communicating that, we're only just now in the process of realizing that we don't have them. And we're only just now articulating the kinds of tools that we think we would need to be able to communicate that intent. It's like let me give one example.
Yeah.
In the days before the walkie-talkie, we used semaphore on the side of a mountain to signal to the troops of Aqaba it's time to mount up and invade for Lawrence of Arabia. And we didn't have the walkie-talkie, and we didn't know how much easier the walkie-talkie could make that process. But now that we have the walkie-talkie, how did we ever make movies without these damn things? And likewise, I think holds true for the tools of communication from onset to the end of the process. Currently, the only tools that we have for communicating our look are paper. And that is extraordinarily inefficient in view of all of the other tools that we're inventing. We need to take a look at end-to-end metadata as the solution to that problem. A problem we don't even know we have.
I used to think of the DP as the chief quality control clerk of the process from front to back.
Used to be, but the industry has changed the definition of the job description.
I mean, there was some years ago meetings all around the world where people were trying to, there were people who would be grading DPs that would come into the grade.
Yeah, but now it's on the DP's dime.
Yeah.
Unless you have a killer contract or, it's gone above and beyond industry and guild guidelines. You're doing that on your own time if you do that.
Okay.
Well, wouldn't it be nice to build at least as much as we can, build that job into the work we do on set?
That's why there's such impetus to get that type of thing on set. There's some great tools, and much like the gear that's coming out is driven by the individuals involved.
Yeah.
And so you really have to look at that individual and see what, machination has driven them to create this tool.
Yeah.
Like Jim Gennard with the Red.
Yeah.
God bless him, man. really. Well, there's those guys everywhere in the process. You just have to understand who those people are and not be distracted by glitzy ads or whatever, glossy brochures, into buying into some corporate, renaming as opposed to actually making a product better. They give it a new name. So, if, for instance, in software, if you're looking for a Jim Gennard in software, you a guy like Stu Maskowitz from the Orphanage. The guy's brilliant, And if you look at there's a dozen color timing tools out there. Each one is as esoteric as the next, and they've isolated themselves in the Silicon Tower mentality, and added buttons and dials instead of making it easier to use, right? Yeah. Really brilliant technology. Good software should not come with a manual. It should not need it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, if you have to read the manual,
it's a piece of
what do you feel about the issue around prosaic color values, in the sense that
that's what I'm talking about.
So, what I mean? Like, warm is comfortable, blue is all alienation. It's such a kind of tarnished old kind of.
Well, again, if you warm up your principal and cool off the background, you're going to separate them a little bit, tell the audience and the other way around.
Stuff like that.
But you take you can download Look by Stu Maskowitz. It's a Magic Bullet Look Suite. Yeah. Download it. Take a look at that. Yeah. And it's a freebie. You can do single images for free, so everybody can have it and play with it. And it's got every look in it, and it takes the cinematic camera metaphor and breaks it down into the chains. So you have matte effects, and digital equivalents for all the matte things that go here. You have lens effects, all the digital vignetting and all these things that will go on with the lens. Then you have in camera, all the filmic changes and variations you can create to an image. And then you have post effects. So you have these isolated and you can combine these all in your look. And you don't need a manual to run it. And you can give yourself any look you want. And it's floating point, so it's not degradatory. It's just amazing. So you got to combine software and hardware innovation to get back to what we took for granted with analog and film.
Is there an element of the professionalization of like, basically you get a student and they get access to something they never had before, which is as soon as they touch a program, to even engage with the program, there's a professionalization that happens because the program demands a certain set of parameters that used to be in the province of the professional. So,
no.
Okay.
Good software does not. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Bad software, retro software, says you got to pull out the manual and do some tutorials to get started.
I don't mean in terms of engagement with that, but I just like you go onto Dreamweaver. If you can make the thing work, it's going to generate a web page that's kind of halfway towards being professional.
When
just
in all reality, HTML is easier to learn than Dreamweaver.
Okay, yeah. But my point in here is this thing about, so you've got somebody at film school, and in year one, they're engaging with all the stuff you're talking about. It's all there. We know, hopefully, that through years of experience of trapping your finger in the car door, or whatever the hell that you've been through, you might know that, you know what I mean? You've got to bang your head on the wall a few times to get something. But it's this indefinable issue within, for me anyway, within cinematography and within the HD mix and the film mix, because I used to call film make beautiful. I could light something and I know the same way and know that film would make beautiful. It would look beautiful in video, but film would make beautiful.
Because it had the latitude.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And the texture. It all comes down to what components of that image are you dealing. What are the components of that image?
See, I'm in search of this issue of atmosphere or the feel or the something. Within all of these things, whether they're lenses or bits of software or bits of resolution, whatever the hell, there's got to be something in the mix. There's got to be something in the mix that hasn't got a name to it or a description around it, which I'm going to ask you to name and describe as we go into the HD space. Because as far as I'm kind of noting, there's a clinicality, if there's such a word, to the kind of images that come out of immense resolution. And
nope.
Let me put it another. Is that enough, or do you want to get hold of that?
No, because digital has the capacity to make any image, but you can't just take it from
In whose hands?
Yeah, in whose hands? What craft went into it?
But can you name the things that produce the in whose hands bit? You know, there are people with the touch.
Like I get asked that all the time, and I was asked, you know, years ago I was asked by someone who wanted to know about motion control, because I used to do a lot of motion control operation and motion control camera work, and someone asked me what makes a good motion control operator, and I had to think about it for a little while, and the only answer that I could muster was, you either built the tree houses or you didn't. And I still don't know how to quantify what makes an artist and what doesn't, except that what they produce is engaging and entertaining, or it's not.
Yeah. Okay. There's a thing about art. I was talking to an artist called Graham Weinbrun. Have you called this guy?
No, I haven't.
There used to be an editing system called ECS.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Graham Weinbrun got together with the geeky guy who did all the technology underneath the ECS system, and they've produced a 444. They're using a digital still camera, and what he's doing is still lifes of the decay. So he sets up a 17th, 18th century still life, as you've seen in a painting, and he shoots it for 3 months, frame at a time, and it decays. And what he's done is he's planted bulbs underneath it, so it actually grows up as well. And the colour is like nothing you've ever seen on an HD camera.
Well, yeah, because
Just wicked.
Have you seen any of the research work?
he doesn't
Paul
have to
DeBevek?
get it in 1/30th of a second.
Yeah, I mean, he's got things going for him. Good.
Have you seen any of the high dynamic range imaging work of Paul DeBevek from the Institute for Creative Technologies at USC? It's pretty phenomenal work, and what he's exploring is higher dynamic range imaging than we are currently capable of obtaining in motion work, because he works from multiple exposures of the same subject, where we work from a single exposure and build the dynamic range and as a hardware function of the acquisition device. And when Scott's talking about latitude, he's talking about the ability for a photographic system to recreate the dynamic range that the human eye sees. That is, things that are vastly too bright or too dim for one single frame imaging system to capture in its dynamic range. And currently the ceiling for most of our sensors are 12-bit sensors. And the rule of thumb, it's not always true, but the rule of thumb with sensors is you take the number of bits of dynamic range that it has at an acceptable measured noise floor and subtract 1, and that's how many stops of latitude you can record. So a 12-bit sensor minus 1 will give you 11 stops of latitude with a fairly acceptable noise floor. The exception, I think, currently being the DALSA, which is a 14-bit sensor or 16-bit sensor. 16-bit sensor. And that's to be applauded in the DALSA, because they've spent a lot of money getting there, you know. And that, to me, is another golden chalice laying out there waiting for all of us seekers. Let's go for that higher dynamic range. They designed and built that sensor just because, like you said earlier, the American government called them up and said, we need to put a couple of 3D cameras on the surface of Mars and have them last for 90 days and take pictures of the surface of Mars. So not only did they last 90 days, they've been up there how many years taking pictures now? And still no lit pixels, and you know.
That's all kind of cosmic radiation.
I mean, the number of gamma strikes those things are receiving every day, and how much they received on their way to Mars is just astronomical, literally astronomical.
In the truest sense of the word.
So we had a small email correspondence which was talking about what the military and satellite might be working around. Sort of 16K is that?
Above it now.
Well above that.
Really? 64? What are we talking about?
Well, we do a lot of government work, so I'd rather not.
You can't. Oh, okay. Right. Okay. Damn. But the point is that sector leads. I mean, it always naturally has to lead. But
it doesn't necessarily always lead. It takes some of its inspirations from us.
Actually, right now, everybody's catching up
Okay.
to the same.
Okay.
Everybody's catching up to the same train right now.
I was part of a downtime agreement in London. It happened in New York as well, but I was artist in residence at a place called Complete Video, which was a very high-end commercials house. They let me loose during the night, and the only deal was if I managed to make a couple of machines do something they really shouldn't ought to tell the editors or whoever the next day that I'd managed to get something to do something that
it shouldn't be able to do.
So that's what you're talking about in terms of the inspiration. It's that kind of head that can do stuff that the other kind of head that doesn't even want to kind of go near. Try and break it creatively.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's precisely right.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, look. I think these guys are a complete pain in the butt. Is there anything on? I think it's coming to its natural end, I feel, because there's energy levels and stuff like that. Is there anything, I mean, apart from my misapprehensions at the beginning, where I was coming in from, is there anything you want to say about this sector, this area, this notional high definition world that we haven't talked about, or at least intimated at?
There's one axe to grind that I have been carrying around in my car with me everywhere, and that's the metadata axe.
Tell.
Metadata is the mechanism by which we will instruct those who finish our movies and television shows in how we want them to be finished. And as it currently stands, on movie sets and television sets, we don't create any metadata per se. We create meta paper. And when everything else is becoming digital, why is that not becoming digital? Why is that not becoming a more effective means of communication?
What's your stab at the answer to that?
My first stab at the answer has been that I've spent my last year propelling the writing of a standardized, interchangeable, open source lookup table format, which was announced at NAB. And our committees at the ASC, driven by Curtis Clark, have created the ASC CDL, which is a color decision list for carrying look management throughout the chain from device to device. So the idea is to become portable with color correction and lookup tables.
I mean, that was a kind answer, because the other answer might be around the cynicism, around this must be something within the system that's producing and not wanting to look at the metadata.
I don't see it that way.
Okay.
I see this as an issue of being responsible to the community. And I will say it over and over and over again, we don't get what we don't ask for. And what the beauty of that is that the flip side of that is if you do make an articulate demand and say in an effective way, in an effective, powerful way, what you need to do your job. The last year or two have confirmed to me that they will build it for you.
Yeah. So its absence prior to this was what was the reasoning? What was the reason for its absence? Or
No one asked for it.
Just simply that?
Simply
Well,
that.
and there wasn't room for it on the existing data structures, acquisition structures.
Yeah, it's
Nothing
true.
about
But
employment patterns?
but they're building it into the systems as,
Well, now
as part
we're-
of the structure.
Yeah, but we're on the
because-
downside of the technology curve now. We now have enough bandpass to put all the image that we can use, right? A good chunk of image, and we got color to spare now. You know, we got room for it if we want to use it or not. That's a qualitative thing. But we got room for color, and we got room for great sound, and we got room for all these things we've been struggling for. We just have no way of keeping track of them. And that's what Dave's talking about.
Yeah, no,
How do you keep track of all that now? And it's just as important to keep track of it, or actually more important to keep track of it now because you have more of it. And so you get to post with all this stuff. And where's the voice? Where's the design voice? Where's the vision?
Where is the reflection of your intention?
Right.
Yeah, no.
There's nothing there.
Someone has to get a notebook out and wade through.
Yeah.
And
you know,
especially in cinema,
But do you not
paperwork
think-
notoriously does not travel.
Was there something though in the mix that there was every 5 years there's a wave of technology. It's a way of getting the older guys out who charge more so that the young can come in and, all
Sure.
that stuff. There was a little bit of a thing in the mix where as decisions were moving to post, you had sometimes directors, got to be careful here, with not the best grasp of the whole process, but a need to alter their way through it because they'd bought the auteur trip, and some of them didn't have the skill or the intelligence for an auteur.
Yeah.
So you gave it into the hands of the post guy, who's got his balls, and he's one, oh, looks nice. But it's like you've got the cameraman at the other end who may have done the exact opposite thing necessary to produce whatever the guy with the balls are doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm saying here is there was we had a little kind of hiccup in that mix. We're talking about metadata, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a little hiccup prior to the act of metadata, where there was almost a move in the industry to destabilize the DP, the person at some level that was taking the responsibility of having for me, an incredibly brave attitude towards having a look in the first place.
I think there's a little bit of a victim mentality built into that question.
Go on in.
That these tools didn't exist before, and that the position of DP is becoming whatever it's becoming by virtue of something that the industry is doing to us, I think is probably, let me turn that on its ear. Let me say that this is an issue of responsibility of craft. And authority is not given, it's taken. And if we take authority over our images and drive the future and drive our craft, then we will have invented or caused to be invented the tools to communicate our intent more effectively. It's our responsibility to ask for those tools. And if we're not receiving them, we have no cause to stand back and complain that they don't exist. To be cause in the matter of your own existence is to be responsible.
Amen.
Yeah.
Last chances.
No, I think I said it. We got everything. Now it's not quantitative anymore. It's qualitative.
Yeah, let's make pretty movies with this.
Like pretty movie. The DP, old school, was the metadata. The look, everything he wanted was on that film. That's where it was. Now, everything is, the basic data files of the image are clean and pristine, and we don't do so much camera filtration anymore because we want to pull keys, we want to pull mats. You don't filter. You filter in post. Then everything becomes a post-filtration process. So on-set communication tools become more viable and more important. And that's why things like, the esoteric packages that assure some guy sitting at a table with the 3 balls, they assure him of his job because nobody's going to walk up and instantly know what those magic balls do, right? Mm-hmm. You can get down there futzy, but how do you know how to save that look or what? That's why you need to get away from that old Silicon Tower mentality again and look at the new tools that are coming along. Again, Stu Maskowitz, any application that does not need a manual is new. Any application that needs a manual is old and proprietary and old school and against everything you want to do creatively. So you get yourself an app, a cut of look, and you get yourself a digital camera, and you get yourself a computer that can take a image or a frame or da-da-da, and that's your timing. And with whatever metadata stream you have, and since there is no standardized metadata stream, we have no way of taking that into post, but at least now with tools like, some of the tools that are coming up, Look is a good example, you can create, it's writing out to metadata, it's writing out that file. It's just there's no standardized train to load that file onto, so you carry it on a little dongle with you into post, and you stick it into machine, and there it is.
I want to ask you one last question, because this may be one where you say, Haven't you been listening to anything we've been saying? But I'm just going to have a go.
Well, haven't you? Got it out of the way early.
I've been trying. Okay, so
Sorry,
I could get a matte box with 4 trays or whatever. Stop kicking the camera. Okay, well, I'm getting excited, you know. I could get a matte box with 4 trays in it, and I could get myself some ND grads, and I could put them in this way and that way and up and all the rest of it. And I know that I can interfere in a kind of boil the developer kind of way with what goes down on in bytes. I nearly lost it and said tape there, but equally, I could get back into post, and I can and a bit of that and like that. But I'm telling myself, I may well be wrong here because I may be captured into an old paradigm, that I can see the difference between the 2 acts.
Yeah.
And my heart makes me want to get the 4 tray box and do that rather than get into post and do.
But you can't use that for. Take your gradient. Okay, take your ND6 gradient, right? Before you were using it as a tonal expression, pre-compositing it, if you will, into your image. Right? Nobody has any choice in the matter. Nobody has any say in the matter, which is kind of nice. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, digital mindset. Take that same ND, right? We're dealing with a format that doesn't have as much latitude. Well, I see a different use for this ND. I'm going to shoot right out this window here, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that ND and slide it in gradient top, right? And I slide it in so it's about halfway, and all of a sudden I lose a stop and a half off that sky. I've just increased the latitude of my recording mechanism. You see, same tool, 2 different applications, 2 different mindsets to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I'm kind of, depends what you, it depends what you want when you go see the thing, wherever you see it, whether you see it here or up here or what the hell.
Film production, conventional film production is a production-centric event. Digital production, in today's environment, is a post-centric event.
You really buy that?
I am that.
What do you feel about that?
I do it every day. I'm living it every single day. All kinds of productions, series, television, commercials, film. I'm doing them all simultaneously.
Okay.
The moment we started to do images on workflows that were transformative, that is where something had to become something else in order to finish the image. The day that we stopped direct printing our images from film to film with 1 pass of color timing, it became transformative and it became post-centric.
When you say DI was probably one of the...
A big point.
What was the first moment of that?
DI.
DI.
That was there.
Well, television was the first moment of that.
Yeah.
Good point. Digital production coming into television,
Yeah. I was thinking of Stucky Bill, John Logie Baird's dummy, 32-line raster with it. It was a ventriloquy Stucky Bill.
But the moment that it became transformative, the good stuff happened somewhere off the set. And if we want to participate in the good stuff that's happening off the set, we have to be able to communicate our intent to those people.
Yeah. Okay. I think we're there.
What's the matter? Haven't you been listening to everything we've said?
Good one, Scott. Haven't you been listening?
I'm holding onto my life raft, you know. Okay, I think we should give ourselves a break, and thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you.